Good morning, everybody. May I start the seminar? Actually, I look at the register name. There should be more people, but it seems that the traffic is not good outside. And if you look at the agenda, we will have a long day today. Particularly in the morning, we have keynote speaker. We have 4 presentations after the keynote speech. So I would like to start now so that we can have more time for discussion later. First of all, welcome all of you to NIDC, the second forum. Before we start the presentation, keynote speaker, allow me to speak a little bit about NIDC. Actually, I prefer to start to thanks the Asia Foundation. Today we have Kun Kim Macquay, the country representative to Thailand, Asia Foundation here. We have Antil Mulakala, who is the Director for International Development Cooperation, the Asia Foundation here. And we also have our keynote speaker. We are very honored to have Kun Meriseni Bauer. Yeah. So she's the Governance and Development Effectiveness Specialist, UNDP, Asia Pacific Regional Center, and UNDP Multi-Country Office, the UNDP program. The NIDC now is located at Thammasat University with the support of Asia Foundation and also Thailand Research Fund. NIDC is a network for international development cooperation, which is a network among policymakers. We have policymakers, we have scholars, we have practitioners who are working in the field of international development cooperations. NIDC was established last year actually, and we aim to do 3 things at least. First, to create and promote the knowledge of international development in Thai society, and if possible in our neighboring countries too. Second, we plan to bridge the world of academic practitioners and policymakers together to share our knowledge and experiences on the international development cooperation. The third one, we would like to be a resource center, the resource base for those who are interested in this field to come look at us, get information from us, and also to be our input, share knowledge together. We hope that we can develop to be the resource center of these issues in Thailand and also in our region, particularly with the Mekong Subregion. With this aim, since last year and in the future also, we arranged several activities. Of course, research, because this is the important method to create the knowledge and explore 2 new ideas. Second, we also arrange seminar. We try to do twice a year so far. Third, we do the publication. We publish some publications. If you look at the file that we provide you, you will find the bulletin. This is the publications that we start producing last year. And this year we will try to publish some books, which is the output of our research project. So this is publication. We are going to start the database as a resource center. Our staff, Kun Thirayut, who are in touch with many of you when we arrange this conference, he will be the one who work on the database system. And we also start the website since last year. If you look at nidc.org, you will find our website. So today's seminar actually is a part of our activities. And we invite all of our colleagues from Mekong Subregion countries to come to join. Actually, if you look at the agenda, you will find that the schedule today, we have 2 sessions. The morning session, which will start from now on, and then from the keynote speaker. This session actually is a public seminar, and we focus on aid coordination. Because I think all of us understand that aid coordination is very critical, very important for aid effectiveness, particularly in terms of efficient delivery process, avoidance of duplication, and transaction cost reduction, which is the very important issues for aid coordination. today we will learn, we will listen from our partners from Mekong Subregion countries to understand how they coordinate. Because I think all of us know that these countries now are the heaven of donors. And I mean, each country has its own system to manage these. So it will be very helpful for us. In the afternoon session, this will be the brainstorming session. I think now all of us agree or at least understand that Sub-South cooperation become a new scheme. Actually, it's not that new scheme, but I mean, it's more popular now as a scheme for aid delivery. In addition, Southern providers, while providing a big amount of aid, an increasing amount of aid, do not pay much attention to evaluation process and indicators in order to evaluate or access the activities. So NIDC finds it very interesting and very essential to develop a set of indicators for SSC, South-South cooperation, particularly from the perspective of our partners, developing partners, particularly from the Mekong Subregion. I think the interesting part today will start from now on from the perspective of multilateral organization, international organizations. Actually, UN has a long experiences of providing aid, and today we are very honored to have Khun Baus here to share the experience with us. This seminar, of course, cannot be conducted without strong support from Asia Foundation, from Thailand Research Fund, our colleagues from Mekong Subregion countries, and of course our partner in Thailand, particularly Thaiga and NIDA. So I would like to thank all partners and supporters for this seminar. And I also would like to thank my university, Thammasat University, which support these, all of my staff also that helped me to arrange this conference. I think it's the time, so I will turn my microphone to Khun Kim from Asia Foundation for the opening speech. Khun Kim, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to share a few words on behalf of the Asia Foundation as we launch today's NIDC forum. The forum reminds us of the importance attached to the emergence of new actors, new modalities, and new partners in international development cooperation and their impact on global aid architecture. The international development landscape has changed dramatically in the last decade in response to new challenges and emerging actors. While current architecture is largely a product of consensus among traditional DAC donors and how it should be managed, we observe that the DAC consensus is thoughtfully challenged increasingly by the growing presence of non-Western development actors. Here in Asia, as we all know, non-traditional donors have contributed to the international development cooperation for decades, while operating largely below the radar of traditional frameworks. Collectively, Thailand and other traditional donors in the region are contributing major resources to development efforts in partner countries. While some of us are registered concern the emergence of these new development actors could undermine DAC-led efforts, the Foundation counts itself amongst those international organizations that see opportunities for innovative and responsive modalities such as South-South, triangular cooperation, and enhanced coordination, the theme of today's program. Reflecting these changes, here at the Foundation we implement several complementary programs to enhance development dialogue and cooperation in the region. For the Foundation, involvement in this area represents a natural extension of our work over 6 decades in Asia. For those unfamiliar with our work, the Foundation is a non-governmental international development organization with headquarters in San Francisco, operating through a network of 17 country offices throughout the region, which our Thailand country program is among the founding ones 60 years ago this year. For the last 4 years, our Asian Approaches to Development Cooperation, or AADC program, which my colleague Anthony Motakala, who's with us this morning from Kuala Lumpur, is the architect, has provided a forum for aid practitioners, academic specialists, and government officials from non-traditional Asian donors, including China, India, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, to share their views on the evolving objectives and modalities of development cooperation. We've hosted a series of forums across the region, revealing some intriguing similarities as well as some important differences amongst the different countries with regard to their philosophy, purpose, and modalities of development assistance. Earlier this month, we convened actually last month, we convened an AEDC forum in Colombo on the theme of social mobility with Anthea facilitated, and I was privileged to attend. AEDC forums have provided insights on the relevance of current international aid frameworks for Asian approaches, and mother-donor alignment around an agreed set of principles and approaches is desirable if possible. Financial support from the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Korean Development Institute, the Foundation is facilitating the next phase of dialogue on critical development effectiveness and cooperation issues. In the case of Thailand, the AEDC program has forged important working relations with the Thailand Development Cooperation Agency, which is represented this morning by Kun Van Chun and some of his colleagues, with Dr. Siripong, who is recognized among the leading academic specialists in this field regionally, and is ably mentoring a new generation of academic specialists and practitioners under her watch, and most recently with NIDC, our host today's forum. We're grateful for the opportunity to work with NIDC and its partners on today's program and more broadly. Look forward to our ongoing partnership. Foundation colleagues, very sensitive, this thing. My Foundation colleagues join me in extending our best wishes for a successful and stimulating program today. Thank you very much, Kaplan Ka.
Thank you. Thank you, Kun Kim. I think I would like to go for the keynote speaker. So today we have Kun Meriseni Bauer from UNDP. So she will share with us on a coordination perspective from our international organization on development cooperation in the Mekong Subregion. Kun Bauer, please.
Thank you, Dr. Siripong. Mr. McQuay. Seminar organizers and partners, the distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I've just returned from leaving Japan, so pardon me if I don't seem to have a flow in my presentation because I've gotten used to just having sushi and sashimi for the last 5 days. On a positive note, though, I'm quite happy to see familiar faces, including Anthea, whom we worked together last year in the Asia-Pacific Development Dialogue on what does aid or effective development cooperation mean in this particular region, the Asia-Pacific, and are there any models that we could look at as emerging from a region like Asia-Pacific. So it's a real delight to be here. I looked at your agenda and I saw that you have 2 key objectives. And I thought to help us this morning, it would be really good to situate our discussion of aid coordination in a broader development finance landscape. I'm not sure what the thinking is within NIDC, but I think the global debate and discussion and dialogue has shifted from aid coordination to development effectiveness, or coordinating finances that are sources for development. So that's the first thing I'll try to do, situate aid in a broader development finance landscape. And the slide in front of you will show that other sources have overtaken aid as a development finance source. In particular, you will see on this slide that FDI in red is a major source of financing rather than ODA, which is the lighter blue shade there. So you'll see in this part of the region, this particular region, FDI has more than taken over ODA. Sorry, just finding okay. So for instance, the portfolio equity as well, a slightly pinkish shade, has also taken, is a major source for countries like Argentina, China, and South Africa. And remittances are more important for countries like Mexico, Bolivia, India, and Israel. ODA, though, is still a major source for West and East Africa, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Myanmar. So I think that's important for us to situate mechanisms or instruments or monitoring and evaluation systems for countries in the Mekong Subregion in terms of, well, what is it you're going to coordinate in the next 5 to 15 or 20 years, beyond aid. In our office, I've been doing a lot of work on data collation and analysis to look at what this means in Asia-Pacific countries. And as a consequence of the work that we're doing in our office, we've tried to map external sources of development finance to countries in Asia-Pacific. And what we've noted is when you put together all the different sources in a pool, in a bucket, you will find that ODA has declined over the last 2 decades. In 1990, ODA as a share of total external sources was 16%. By 2000, it had reduced to 7%, and in 2011, 4%. However, you'll see that the actual total volume in absolute value has increased, but as a share in the bucket of external sources, it's declined. Now, when we hone into the sub-region of Southeast Asia, you will find that there's a similar trend, that ODA as a proportion of the total external sources has also declined from 9% to 7% to 4%. And I think for the purposes of this seminar, it will be really important for Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar to really think about, well, how do these feature in your own countries? In the next month, we will be doing a detailed analysis of these sources of flows in fund, including domestic sources in Laos. So it's what we call a development finance and aid assessment. It's a tool that we developed in our office. It's the first globally, and we've piloted it in the Pacific where I'm from, in PNG. Then we did a study in Vietnam, and so now we're going to do a similar study in Laos this month, Bangladesh. We've just almost completed one in the Philippines. So it will give us a sense of what the landscape looks like in different contexts, in low-income countries, in lower middle-income countries, in upper middle-income countries, and doing the analysis from different angles in terms of development status as well as income levels. And one thing we've noticed already is that different countries are at different stages of development. They're also at different levels of sophistication in terms of their institutional setups and their systems and tools. If we look at investment for Southeast Asia sub-region, clearly you'll see that the net government expenditure is still above private sector capital formation. And then another way to look at this analysis is to look at, well, how much is government spending per person? Because absolute values are fine, but if you look at it per person in the country, you'll see that a lot of countries are spending much less than the average in terms of risk region. There's Cambodia there, Laos, and Vietnam. We didn't have the data for Myanmar, hence you won't see it on this graph. And then if we were to dissect the analysis from an income level, this is what I had mentioned before. For low-income countries, there's still a dependence on aid in certain parts of the Asia-Pacific region, but it varies from country to country. However, one of the key findings is that ODA as a share, again, of external sources has reduced remarkably from 79% in 1990 to 47% in 2000, and then to 27% in 2012. If we look at lower middle income countries, dependence on ODA or the share of ODA is much less. And then we thought we would do an interesting analysis on if the objective of aid is to reduce poverty, then is there a correlation or relationship between the amount of aid a country is receiving and how successful it is in reducing poverty and at what rate? And here you'll find that, I'm trying to look for what countries. We have Vietnam and Laos. So this is the amount of ODA you receive poverty levels. So I suppose in terms of the discussion today, then it will be really important to look at, can South-South cooperation have a major role in reducing poverty in your sub-region? And if so, how would you then measure the impact of such a modality on your development outcomes? The other question to ask is, in terms of the second objective of monitoring and evaluation, well, if some of your South-South cooperation providers are not part of the OECD DAC community, then you really are talking about how do you come to some agreement of defining South-South cooperation for you to then measure it and then also agree on, well, how do you also measure the impact or its or the change that's been brought about as a result of the development of your development outcomes. And I think, in my previous last visits to La PDR, this is one thing that they've noticed, that while they receive a lot of aid, the green bar, poverty is still high. So now, as part of their LDC graduation strategy, they're seriously looking at, as they graduate out of LDC status and also out of the current income level they're in, what are some changes that they will face in terms of the aid that they now access that they may no longer be accessing, concessional to non-concessional, and also if they were to enhance the way that they manage development finance in the country, would that mean more opportunities to access different funds or pools that they don't have access to at the moment? So it's not always a negative, that they're now seeing that there are opportunities as well in terms of graduating out of LDC and also becoming a living country. Okay. Then I saw in the background of your agenda there was some mention of principles, from Paris to Busan. So I thought it would be really good for us to discuss, and this is my take on it. In Monterey, it is really about volume. Rich countries helping poor countries address poverty and to catch up. And so the idea was a commitment to 0.7% of their gross national income. However, if I'm sure all of you are abreast with the results of that, and I think only 5 was initial 2. 7 countries have achieved that. Most of the OECD DAC member countries have not. So there is a real discussion around the post-2015 goals and the means of implementing that in terms of the global partnership goal of the MDGs that wasn't achieved, which was really the MDG 8 was on global partnerships on ODA, on trade, and access to resources. Then in Paris, it was really about principles. Developing countries having ownership, working with the development partners to align their development programs to the country's priorities, development partners harmonizing before they even engage with the recipient country or developing country, managing for development results rather than just focusing on the means or modalities, and mutual accountability. Now, with the surveys of implementation of the Paris Declaration, it was really clear that these 2 areas had the least progress. Managing for results and mutual accountability. So I think these have continued on as key areas that the global partnership should focus on. Moving on to Accra, it was really expanding on Paris and fine-tuning certain aspects of it. And then in Busan, the focus was on ownership, results, inclusive partnerships, which to me is the one that is relatively different from the previous development effectiveness agenda or aid global dialogue partnership, and transparency and accountability. And then in Mexico, they specifically focused on, given the global environment and countries experiencing austerity, then where can future development be finance from. So they focused on these key things: domestic resource mobilization, voluntary South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, the issue or situation or needs of middle-income countries, and what would development cooperation in these particular countries look like. And then the role of the private sector or business as a partner for development. And it is with these set of issues that we thought that the discussion should no longer be about aid alone, but aid in the context of the broader development finance. So a lot of our work has been to try and help countries better understand that, to then know, well, what would inclusive partnerships look like, and what is it we're really looking at. So what I thought I could also share, given your second objective, is the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation Global Monitoring Survey results for 2013. This was the first. There are 10 indicators, but unfortunately 2 have not been finalized. And they are the ones that I know a number of countries, including Laos, in the sub-region, are really interested to understand better. And this is the one on creating an enabling environment for CSOs and business as a private, as a partner for development. So the 2 indicators for CSOs and the private sector have not been fully developed. So we're hoping that the GPEDC Joint Secretariat would be able to finalize that before the next round of survey. But just going to the results, you will see from this table that this is Cambodia. Green, the dark green means met target already, so they've met the target for mutual accountability strengthened by inclusiveness. Then they're on track with development cooperation being more predictable. Here. Then there's a negative change in terms of aid on budgets, which is subject to Parliament scrutiny. And then over this side on aid is untied. It's actually declined compared to before. And then there's no change in terms of development and use of country systems. Then the other country that participated in this first round of surveys was Vietnam. And Vietnam has already met the target, like Cambodia, for mutual accountability, strengthened by inclusiveness. And it's lagging in terms of 4 areas. The first is development cooperation being predictable, aid on budgets that are subject to parliamentary scrutiny, development and use of country systems, and aid being untied. In fact, it's worse than from before its results in 2011. Okay. So then I suppose you're interested to know, well, what is the UN doing about this? Unfortunately, I'm not able to speak for the UN, but from the work that we do as UNDP, funding the UN coordination system at the global, regional, and country level, these are some of the things that I wanted to share. We've seen in the past 20 years that aid flows via multilaterals has actually reduced. There's more funding going through bilateral flows or bilateral mechanisms. And one thing to note is that more countries are now seeking budget support or program-based support as opposed to project-based support. So the modalities that developing countries or recipient countries would like has meant that countries who are donors see that it makes more sense for them to provide aid directly rather than going through multilateral mechanisms. The number of actors and donors has increased on average, including for each country. The interesting thing, though, is new aid modalities, mechanisms, and initiatives, as I mentioned, have emerged. You even have the Global Fund for tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV and AIDS. UNICEF has gone in a very interesting way of asking you for your small change and aeroplanes and working with philanthropies for funding development on issues related to children. There's also new partnerships with an emphasis on setting goals and results. So it's not just about the instruments or about the UN trying to get direct contribution, but the willingness now to partner with key development partners in different country contexts and more concerned about collective contribution rather than having a direct contribution to the results achieved. And the focus we really will take going forward is on development outcomes and impacts. And how do we better measure that? So I think the principle from Paris going on to the Sun of mutual accountability and having that as transparent as possible is what we would like to focus on. In terms of the UN reforms and efforts at the global level, you'll note that UNDP is now part of the Joint Secretariat of the GBEDC. And the reason for doing that is to try and reflect the interests of the member countries of the UN and for emerging development partners who may not necessarily be part of the OECD community. I think one interesting reflection that we've had is for Thailand. It's part of the OECD DAC, it reports to the OECD DAC community, but at the same time it recognizes that the way they see aid is not only about helping a country, but it's about mutual benefit. It's about helping your neighboring countries. And we had a really interesting discussion with your central bank who said, we are not tracking the amount of times we go to one of the Mekong countries. Our interest is more to help them improve their monetary policies. And if we have to go 10 times, that's fine. But we're not tracking how much. So that's the difference in terms of how they view their support. So it was really interesting for us to then work out how do we contextualize how we are reforming our work at the country level and bringing it up to try and aggregate and make sense of aggregating our efforts at the regional level, also then feeding into the global dialogue and making sure that the linkages make sense. At the regional level, there's more effort now into coherent policies. No longer are we trying to have projects that only look at governance issues or at economic incentives or measures that help reduce poverty, or just looking at climate change risks separately. We are now trying to have a holistic approach to the way we support countries and making sure that the interlinkages or the connections between improving governance and accessing climate finance and responding to disasters is done in a coherent manner. And I think that puts us in a good place going forward for the post-2015 development agenda. Because there, the requirement, which is quite different from the MPGs, is that the coherent policy and program approach will be necessary. And then at the country level, we now have moved away from each UN agency having its own development cooperation program to UN development assistance frameworks. So now the UN tries to have just one country program that all the UN agencies buy into. And in the past, where we would usually allow UN women to take lead in terms of gender-related issues, now we recognize the need for all of us to come together and to work on different issues depending on the country's needs. So if a country's demand or need is to help improve the economic capacity or capability of women and children, then it clearly requires UN women to partner with FAO, ILO, UNDP, and ASEAN. So it's no longer just the agenda for women. Also, at the country level, we're now trying to do joint programs, where we have the UN Development Assistance Framework as the broad mapping of our program that we do, and then within that, we have managed joint programs on gender, if it's an issue that the country sees we have comparative advantage, or if it's electoral support, and we try. Thank you. Then we try and approach it that way. Including the mechanisms that we use, we've even now tried to help countries mobilize resources. So I think, the UN in terms of its neutrality and capacity to convene different partners, because we're not a donor, we've been able to try and help countries do that. So harmonizing different partners and then engaging the country. I think, despite us having a strategy for private sector partnership, it's still an area that we have a long way to go. And I think it's more to do with our systems and the way the different processes that we go through in terms of putting together and putting a program versus what the private sector sees and what they need and how quick they want to move on with their work, and the sort of returns that they're expecting if it is not purely charity or corporate social responsibility. So I thought, in terms of a way forward, what would be really useful for the Mekong Subregion is, as you engage as think tanks, as academia, including CSO partners and government intellect, it would be really important to work out what sort of evidence you can gather around the use of South-South cooperation in your individual countries, and then bringing that together to say something about the successes, where you've succeeded